The journey we're taking is the journey within you. Everybody has their own story and their own journey to share. Every journey conceals another journey within its lines. The path not taken and the forgotten angle. Listen to the stories from others sharing their triumphs and struggles that led them to where they are today. Welcome to the journey within you. And I am so happy to have a sweet lady here with me today. And we have not actually met in person, but I had the privilege of listening to her at an Unstoppable event with Amberly Largo, who we both adore. And she was there giving her, we call it like TED Talk. I mean, it was there on the platform, and I got to be virtual. And I'm gonna bring her on in. This is Jillian. Hi, Jillian.
Hello, how are you?
I am wonderful. I am just so thrilled to have you here because your story was one that I know that others need to hear. And what better way to bring you on to the podcast and let other women understand that they're not alone. You know, so many feel like they're alone through their struggles, through their life. And so tell your story, share your story.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on here. It's such an honor to be here and be able to share my story because I hope that it will impact somebody else and maybe they'll feel inspired and go on their own self-discovery journey too. So thanks for having me on.
Yes.
So for me, my story is a little bit interesting. I lived my entire childhood as a secret. My dad had hid me from his family when I was a little girl. And when I was about 11, I found out I was actually a secret. So my mom had raised me. I grew up with 3 older brothers in her home, and I'd get to see my dad like once a year when he would stop by. He was a truck driver, and I knew about his family, but I didn't know they didn't know about me. And so I was at a tender age of 11 that I was starting to become very angry. I was kind of an angry child, and my mom had taken me into a counseling office, and she said, the counselor was like, "She doesn't know, these people don't know about her." And my mom had to tell me that I was in fact a secret. So then because I knew I was a secret at 12, I got to start going with my dad in the summertime. So I would go in the truck and I would go on commercial shoots because he hauled special automotive vehicles. And I would get to go with him, and then his wife would call on the phone, and I would immediately get really quiet, and I would be afraid to even chew on the piece of gum I had on my mouth. And I didn't want her to hear me. And it's interesting because it wasn't like my dad ever said to me, "Oh, be quiet." You know, it was like
You already knew.
Right, and I wanted to always earn that love, right? I didn't feel like it was given to me freely. It was something because I didn't get to see him that often that I had to earn my love. And so I never wanted to walk on what anybody else was going on in their life.
Right.
But as I got older, this made me really start questioning my worth. And so I was at this tender age and I began feeling really alone, wondering if I belonged, wondering if I mattered or if I was good
Yeah.
enough. And ultimately, by the time I was a teen, I really began looking for love in all the wrong places, trying to fill that
Yep.
void in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, naturally, right? Like we all want to
Right.
be
Right.
loved. We all want to feel like we belong because that's one of our basic human needs as human beings here.
Exactly.
We're emotional beings. So
Mhm.
I ended up getting pregnant at 17.
Mm.
And as you can imagine, that was a very big obstacle, big turning point in my life. And I specifically remember one of my teachers actually saying to me, like, "Oh, you had so much potential."
Oh my
And
gosh. It's like
and
already telling you.
Renee, and I mean, I know, it probably wasn't meant, detrimentally to me or,
Mm.
it probably just slipped out of her mouth. Um,
Yeah.
but I was really nervous and I was really unsure about my life at that point, but I thought, "Okay, I have 2 options," right? Like, I
Mm,
can sit
mm,
back and I can become that statistic that teacher thought I was going to
mhm,
be,
mhm,
or I can believe in myself and I can show those that doubted me that my life was not over, that it was
mm.
truly just
Just beginning.
beginning.
Yeah.
And, I have to be honest with you and tell you that I remember I made an appointment after school to go to an abortion clinic, and I
Mm,
think this is just something that is important to share because I know a lot of women who maybe have had one that really struggle with shame, and I just, I want you to know that you're not alone and, that doesn't define your life.
right,
Um,
right.
and I also wanna give other people listening an opportunity to know that they do have a choice.
Mhm,
And so I made an appointment. I drove my car right after school, and it was,
mm.
30 minutes away.
Oh,
And back in these days, I'm, like, a little aging myself here a little bit, but back in those days, there was no such thing as an iPhone, and so
no.
I printed out my MapQuest directions.
I remember those folders.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm looking at my MapQuest directions, I'm on the freeway, and it tells me to exit, this exit, and
Mhm,
there's these cones in front of it because there's road construction, and so I have to go
mm,
past to the next exit. It takes me 30 minutes, I'm driving in circles trying to find these streets that are on my MapQuest directions. I'm late to my appointment, I put my car in park, I'm 30 minutes late, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Like, I didn't make it, and I'm like, "You know what?" I sit there, I start bawling my eyes out, and
mhm, mhm.
I start I start driving on the way home, and I realize that I'm not bawling because I missed my appointment. I'm
Exactly.
bawl I'm bawling because I never wanted to go back there again, and I didn't.
Right,
And
right.
I would go home from that point on, and in the evenings, my older brothers at the time were much older than me on my mom's side
Mhm,
who I lived with, and they were all off at college by this point, out of the house, and my mom was she cleaned for a living, and so she
mhm,
worked really long, hard hours, and she went to bed about 7 o'clock at night, and so after she'd go to bed, I'd be all by myself, and I'd
mm,
get in my car, and I would drive to this empty parking lot, and I remember just opening up I had a little sunroof, and I'd open up my sunroof, and I would just look up at the sky, and I would just promise that baby in my belly that I was going to show him that we can do hard things and
mm,
that our
mm,
life is not over, that we don't need to feel unworthy, that
mhm,
we can do this, and I would just
mm.
promise him that. And so at 9 months pregnant, I started college. I had my son on a
Nice.
Monday, and I went back to college the next Monday,
Oh
and,
my goodness.
I was I mean, only 2% of teen moms earn a college degree by age
Exactly.
30, like,
Mhm, mhm.
but I was gonna learn to believe in myself even if others didn't, and so
Right.
by doing the work, by acing one test, one class at a time, like, there might have been Play-Doh on the walls and in my
Yeah,
hair, but I
yeah,
was gonna get through this, and,
yeah.
you know, I really felt, the weight that each assignment held because
Mhm,
overall, I think I directly translated this to my worth too, because if I
mhm.
didn't do this, then I was unworthy.
Right.
And so I actually ended up graduating valedictorian of my college,
Awesome.
and I became an emergency room trauma nurse, which I still am today.
That is huge.
Yes.
And that's
And
a lot.
it is. And what I like to say though is that I really have loved my career as an ER nurse, I really have, but, there's things that we see and things that we do that are
Mm,
also really difficult,
very hard. Mhm,
but it is another thing that has given me, um, a feeling of I mattered, right? Because if
mm,
my hands have helped save lives,
mhm.
I know that I mattered in that
Mhm.
situation, right? Because
Mhm.
even
Right.
though I had been through all of these things and I had overcome these obstacles, I really had never dived deep into the feelings that I had felt as a little girl. And
Hmm.
instead, I had kind of stuffed those down, and I had
Yep.
started this journey of overcoming these obstacles, right? And I was becoming
But you were still
successful.
packing stuff down. Yeah.
I was still, and I would just sweep it
Mhm.
under the rug, and a lot of times that's what we do, right? It's like
Yeah.
we just have to get to the next week. We just have to get to next year. We
Right.
just have to
Check
we
that
just have
off.
to get to
Check that
yes,
off.
right?
Yeah.
And so we just
Yeah.
push everything else under the rug so that we can
Mhm.
accomplish those dreams. And oh, in 5 years when I make this much money or when I have this, then I'll worry about that, right? Well,
Right. Right.
when we do that, things, you know, build up over time. And,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, despite these accomplishments, I had really pushed those feelings of unworthiness, of I don't matter to the side. And what ends up
Mhm. Mhm.
happening when we don't let those out and we don't dive deeper into them, they start creeping into areas of your life, every
All
area of your life.
areas. Yes. Yes.
And so, I had met my husband when my son was 3, and you know,
Oh.
we get married, we start having more children, and all of this stuff starts coming up, right? Like he works hard at his job, and
Mm.
I'm like, oh, I don't matter, and
Yep.
he does.
You're gone.
Yep, he doesn't communicate something, and I'm like, oh, I don't matter, because
Yep.
it was this lens that I had learned to live my life through,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it
I can
wasn't until. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I can relate to that,
Mhm,
about putting things so deeply. In the last
mhm.
12 weeks, I've been going through a coaching with Alejandra, you know who she is, and, um, I didn't realize I had something so deep buried until she
Yep,
had us go back and meditate and sit with us as a child. Find
yep,
an area, whoever that little girl was, go back and sit with
mhm,
her. And I was like, "Oh my goodness." And it all came back. And I'm like, I had buried that so deep, I didn't know the secret,
yep,
the thing I didn't want anybody to know about. And I
yes,
carried that and I saw how that had carried through my whole life,
mhm,
creeping into every area of my life. And wow, when I released it this past weekend, all I could say
mhm.
was, I'm free. I am free.
Yes,
You let it
yes.
out. And
It
it's
Yeah, and it's
it's it's
so
hard.
important, right? Like, and I'll be
Yeah.
honest, like, I was, a little over 2 years ago now, like, I was about to leave my marriage, like, and
Hmm.
then it and then it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, we started
Hmm.
going to therapy. At one point, we were paying a mortgage payment in therapy,
Oh
because he
gosh.
had his own childhood stuff, and
Yep.
I had mine, and I'd
It
like to
all
say.
came.
I like to say we carried our grief cases with us into our relationship, and then we just kept
Yeah.
piling more and more stuff into this
Mhm.
grief case that we had,
Mhm.
until it came to the point where it literally just explodes. You have a mess
Explodes.
all over the floor,
Yeah.
and you have
Mm.
to really most people at that point walk away, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm. They give
so
up. Yeah.
yeah, and at that point, we had a choice, right? It was either give up
Mhm.
or put in the work, and when you give up,
Mhm.
unless you're going to go dive deep and on yourself, which is what I recommend, um, you're going to carry that baggage, just somewhere
All
else
into
with
the
you.
next. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. And, I think a lot of us as children, we kinda learn to do things for people and earning our love, and
Mhm.
really, ultimately, we just want to feel seen. We wanna feel like we mattered. And,
Right.
you know, I did these things because I hadn't taken that time to heal that childhood wound of being a secret, and that I was
Mhm.
struggling with and sizing up my life with. And I
Mhm.
think in today's world, with social media and all of that, I think it's harder and harder to share our struggles,
Mhm.
because we think that our lives are supposed to be this highlight reel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we live our life comparing ourselves to others, and when we're just sharing the highlight reel, and we're feeling alone, it leaves us
Mhm.
feeling alone
Mhm.
in what we're going through behind that screen.
We start seeking so much validation through the
Mm,
wrong things. And I
Yes.
love the comparison thing because I was praying on that this morning because there's so many that, like you said, watch things on social media and they want to put themselves in that life. But that's the life that God gave them. You were
Mhm.
given a purpose in a different way. And we're so afraid to show that. Like you said, we can't be ourselves because we haven't gotten over things that we need to get over. And, I think I get told all the time, you smile all the time and you're always happy. And I'm like, I'm truly joyful. I am very
Mhm.
joyful, but I had the things and I still go through life things just like everybody, and I'll share some of them. Not all things
Mhm.
have to be on social media, but people
No.
that know me, they know the things that I've had hard in my life. But I am a joyful person because I have
Yeah.
someone walking it with me. Not only my husband, that's amazing, but I have God who takes me through everything. And so
Yeah.
I have that smile because of him.
Yeah. Mhm. Well, and I'll tell you that, I think that, part of it is just we need to be diving deeper into each other's lives right in front of us. And
Mhm. Mhm.
I think what I think before, COVID happened and everything, we were kind of on this path where there was a lot of isolation and COVID really
Mhm.
made that much more exaggerated. And so I do
Mhm.
think that there is a pandemic of loneliness going around,
Mhm. Mm-mm.
and being alone and being lonely to me are two different things. And,
It
being
is.
alone is healthy, right? If we can
Right.
take that time, sit with your thoughts, sit with your
Mhm.
emotions, ask yourself the deeper questions. How
Mhm.
do I feel? What makes me feel this way? Have
Mhm.
I felt
Mhm.
this way before? Is it
Mhm.
related?
Mhm.
And once you start diving deeper into those emotions and process them, then you really can understand the truth behind the thoughts that you have.
Right.
Right. And so I think the solution to that is connection.
Mm.
And which, because I see a lot of it, right? Like as an ER nurse, there
Yeah.
is so much of what we do is what I like to call is put a band-aid over bullet holes.
Yeah.
Because, like, sure, when you come in, we can fix you up. We can hand you that medication,
Mhm.
ease your pain or,
Mhm.
but really we're not getting to the
To
core,
the deep. Mhm.
yes, of where the true change is going to happen. And I'll be honest, like a lot of people that we see are people that come back for like similar
Over and
issues
over.
over
Mhm.
and over again. And
Yeah.
it's sad, right? And I'm like, well,
Very.
I mean, and we have to take ownership and we have to start really diving deeper into the truth behind that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
what they're all really craving is connection, right? Which is met
Mhm.
on the other side of getting vulnerable, of sharing our
Mm.
struggles. And so
Right.
a year ago, I was like, you know what? Like, I love what I do. I love,
Mhm.
love, love
Mhm.
being an ER nurse. Like, it is one of my passions. But there was something missing.
Mm.
And so, because I felt like the world was just kind of burnt out, that they were isolated, that they were lonely, and I wanted to help
Mhm.
do something about it, which is why I
Mhm.
started my podcast, Life Without Secrets, because I wanted a place where people could, share their struggles and
Mhm.
get vulnerable. And, it doesn't mean Life Without Secrets does not mean like, oh, we need to go tell all our dirty secrets,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
No,
No.
that is not what that means, right? Life Without
Right.
Secrets means to be open and honest and transparent with
Mhm.
yourself and with others if you choose to be.
Mm.
But it means
Exactly.
being true to who you are and what you believe in.
Mhm.
And so it's really a path of self-discovery
Mhm.
and transformation because
Yeah.
we all have our own stories, and I think it's a
Mhm.
beautiful when you can share that and feel seen and heard and loved and know that you belong.
Mhm. Mhm. Definitely. I love the fact that, so many times people think they have to tell all the dirty details. That's not what
Mhm.
matters. The part is
No.
that you're sharing that you have been through an experience that maybe you will go a little deeper with the one-on-one person And, so
Yes.
they understand what it was, but you don't have to
Mhm.
share all the details. You're just sharing your story. It's a part of your story.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to tell this much of their story, the happy part,
Yeah.
and I went through a horrible marriage for 15 years,
Mhm.
abusive and mental abuse. And then coming out of that and finding myself again, and then meeting the man of my life that God put, I mean, amazing man.
Mhm.
And we've been married 26 years now, but I was open to seeing what God had for me instead of thinking I had to be taking
Yeah.
whatever came my way, because you get in that mentality of thinking I just accept anybody because I'm not
Yeah.
worthy. I don't matter, you know?
Yes.
And so when I
Mhm.
finally took that out and let God do the work, he put the beautiful human in my life, and
Yep.
so I get sad at seeing, like you say, you see the same people. It's the same situation with like jailhouse, people over and over coming into
Mhm.
these jails and our mental
Yeah.
facilities, or it's over and over. And it's
Yeah.
because they don't have the connections. They don't
Yep.
have a person, that
Yep.
they can open up to and start seeing the other side of their life.
Yeah.
God
And
intended us to have a beautiful life.
yes, and to be with each other. We're not meant to be
Yes.
alone, right? And
No,
and and
no.
the studies are there, right? Like,
Yeah, I
mm,
bet.
I believe that, like, during COVID especially, I think that there was a huge rate of elderly people dying because they were
Yes, they're
lonely. They lost
alone.
they
Yes.
lost their will to live because they didn't
Mhm,
have that connection. And,
mhm.
like, connection really creates a more positive self-image. It
Mhm,
decreases our mental
mhm.
health issues such as anxiety and depression.
Yep.
There has been studies that show that it actually lowers our blood pressure. It also increases our
Ah,
immune functions, and it also increases our lifespan, which I
right.
have seen with my own family. And so
Mhm.
my grandmother is 104, and
Mine was
she
100.
what oh, that's so sweet.
Yes. Yeah,
I love that. So and
yeah.
she had 5 kids, then she had
Mhm,
17 grandbabies, and then we now
mhm.
have 50 great-grandbabies,
Oh my
and
gosh.
yes, but it's interesting because I'm like, a lot of times nowadays, if you'll look at families and they spread out a lot more,
Mhm.
just because they have to, because things are
Right,
expensive or what have
right.
you. And growing up, our family, and I think this is really what, kind of saved me overall in my journey too, is like we all gathered in my grandma's tiny little house,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
all 17 of us cousins on
Yeah,
every holiday, and we were all really close. And I can tell you that
yeah.
that has continued her will to live as well. Like,
Mhm,
we
mhm.
actually we joke around, we're like, "Okay, who's gonna have another baby this year for
Yeah,
grandma? Because
for gra
she's gonna she's gonna wanna, like, see that baby, that's gonna keep her
Yeah,
going." And
yeah.
really what that is just there's a connection, there's a bond
Mhm,
there, and that's what we
mhm.
all need, right? And, like, this isn't just
Yes.
in our family lives either, like, this is how you create a great environment in work as well, right? Like,
Mhm,
there's
mhm.
2 reasons why people go to work. It's 1 because they need the money, right?
Yeah.
And 2 is because they feel connected there.
Mhm,
Because
mhm.
some people will even continue to work at that job because they feel connected, even if they don't
Exactly.
even love
If
the
they
job.
hate the job. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And so it's so important to build connection and community wherever
Mhm,
you go, whether that's in your
mhm,
family, in your neighborhood, in your
mhm,
job, and all of
mhm,
this, it also develops greater resilience so that
mhm.
when we are faced with challenges, we can get back up. We
Yep.
can bounce back faster because we
Yeah,
feel the sense of community connection. We know we are worthy, we
yeah.
are valued, and we are loved, which gives us
Mhm.
purpose in this world.
Most
So
definitely.
I am just so passionate about that,
Mm,
and
I love that.
encouraging others to really just, dive deep. It's hard, like technology too, it is
Mhm.
a little bit it's beautiful in one sense, right? Because we can be like,
Yes.
let's
Let's
Zoom
get
and let's
together.
Yeah, and we'll, like, have a little girls club
Mhm.
online, like, that's
Mhm.
so cool, and we can talk about
Yeah.
life. That's so beautiful,
Yep.
and then there's another part of it where, like, we have so much coming at us 24/7
Mhm. Mhm.
that we aren't diving into each other's lives that are right in front of us, so we
Right.
really we
Right.
have we have to be conscious, and we have to
Mhm.
not let the world dictate our lives and withhold us from living the life that we deserved and the connection that we deserve to feel.
Oh, definitely. We travel and we're on the road
Mhm.
pretty much 24/7. We're in Illinois this week. We go home for a weekend, and my excuse not seeing people is, well, I got to unpack the RV, I got to repack the RV. I made myself busy. And so at the
Mhm.
beginning of January, I thought, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore because I want to see my people. I want to be around my
Yes.
family. I don't care how tired I am. I will get it done. So I
Yep.
intentionally started putting we have 4 kids, all
Mhm.
married, we have 13 grandbabies,
Aw.
one great grandbaby. And I said, once a month, regardless, I want us to get together, whether it's breakfast, dinner, go bowling, do something together. And they just lit up because
Mhm.
we're seeing them Christmas, birthdays, that kind of thing. And I said, that's my fault because I haven't made the time and I don't want that anymore. I want to see my family. And then I started making excuses of not seeing community. And I'm like, who sets the calendar here? I do. So, I started
Yes.
making that where I go meet a girl for lunch. Hey, I'm home this week. Let's plan a lunch date. I need to hug your neck. And just,
Yes.
yeah, we talk, like you said, we talk on the phone, we get to do those things, but we need that touch. We need to see you. you know, I'm very thankful
Yes.
for technology because it's brought me all these beautiful people in my life, including you. And, that's how I get to stay most connected.
Mhm. Yeah,
Prayer
I love that.
warriors, the prayer warriors and that. So, because we're not
Yeah.
able to be home and be in a church involved like we'd like to be, going all the time. And so I get to stay connected with all the people in the church, this way. But
Mhm.
yes, the connection is very valuable.
And I love how you bring up busyness too, like, that's such
Hmm.
a great and important point to make because we do live in a culture where we always have to be doing something.
Hmm.
And there is so much benefit to rest
Hmm.
and finding that time to sit with your thoughts, being
Hmm.
alone, sit
Hmm.
with your thoughts and figure out those deeper feelings so that you can become the person that you're meant to be. And
Exactly.
when you are connecting with yourself on the deeper levels, you will be so much more likely to build on the other important relationships in your life.
Yes, yes. We had this weekend down, so we stayed at a KOA. And I
Mhm.
said, Tim, we're not working this weekend because usually we try to catch up on stuff. And I said we can brainstorm because we had some things we wanted to create, which is fun
Mhm.
for our
Yes.
business. But I said we're gonna get. They had trails there, and I said, come on. I know it's still cold, but we got to get out. We just got to be
I love
together
that.
this way, not in working because we're together all the time. But
Yes.
in a working relationship, I said we need to be husband and wife and just go enjoy the day. Sit back if we want to take a nap, that kind of thing. And then
That's
this
so
week,
beautiful.
I love that you brought up about being in your thoughts. I know I've got so many things, but you keep triggering these things that have been going on all week. Um, Jessica Dudley's sweetheart, she started this week in the morning at 6 a.m. Being in your thoughts and journaling and just some
Mhm.
scripture reading. And she's on her Facebook group page. And so we're doing that every morning at 6. And it's just, how are you getting up with your thoughts in the morning? Are you grabbing the phone and getting on social media right away? Or are you going to Jesus first, getting your thoughts with him and let him be in your thoughts to create your day? And it's been really, really sweet, and I've loved it each morning, and then journal after, the scripture and stuff that we've read. And
That's
so
amazing.
that's so important.
Yeah, I
So
actually
important.
start my day every day. It's called Daily Hope with Pastor Rick Warren. It's a, podcast as
Yeah.
well. I listen to that
Yeah.
every Monday through Friday when we wake up. Me and my husband sit on the couch.
Ah.
He makes me my coffee, and I sit in the dark, and that's our
Oh,
time
nice.
to just have some quiet
Mhm.
time and, listen to Pastor Rick, and it sets my day off on the right
Mhm.
track.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think it's also important. I love that you are doing that with your husband and making time to
Mhm.
like do things that you enjoy together, because
Mhm.
there is something to be said, right? Like, we can be with somebody and still feel lonely too.
Yeah, yeah, and there's too
Just
many out there that are feeling that way.
Yes, and part of connecting is doing new things together and
Mhm, mhm,
creating that space where you can have
mhm,
conversations to just come up. So, like
mhm.
yesterday, like my husband and I are so busy right now. We have 3 kids. They're all
Oh,
doing something, so we're always
sports.
going somewhere. Yes,
Yeah.
and he builds teams. He's got tons going on with work. I have tons
Mm,
going on with what I do, and so we're pulled in so many directions. So yesterday, we were on a podcast together, and then
uh-huh.
we had a couple calls, and then we scheduled it into our calendar to do a walk and talk. And we just walk around our neighborhood. We walk down to the lake. We live by a lake, and we just
Nice.
talk about whatever comes up. And we plan that in our
Mm,
schedule because it's so important, and it's such a
yes.
good way to connect with each other.
Mhm, mhm. It's
So I
valuable.
love
I
that
mean,
you did
it's
that.
yeah, because he comes in, he's exhausted. So you know you're not going to have his full attention. You're tired, so you
Mhm.
have to plan that so that your brains are can connect and talk about things that you know are valuable to each other and the creating. I love that we got up with the creative juices on
Yes.
Saturday and I had prayed
Mhm.
about it all night and I was like, I've got to talk to you about this. We've got to do this. And he just started putting it on paper and it was so fun to see it come alive and we hope to launch it in June. I mean, that's just how quick, you can do something if you take the time to stop and not be
Yes.
just doing everything, routine stuff. We get in such a routine, right? Habits of just
So
doing the
much.
same thing over and over. We definitely schedule the date days. People are like, well, you're together all the time. I said, but it's different. You need a
Mhm,
date.
mhm.
I was telling my daughter and stepdaughter, I don't think they've been on a date in forever. And I'm like, honey, your kids are getting older. You guys need to go on a date. Take time
Mhm.
with each other. You both work hard. Don't
Yes.
miss out on that. Don't wait. And
Yeah.
then they like, why are you so angry at each other? Because you're not talking to each other. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's so
And that's
important.
Yes, and if you don't have family around, like, another thing people can do is build in their community, like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, like, want to switch off? I'll watch your kids on
Mm-hmm.
Friday if you watch my kids next Friday so we can do
Mm-hmm.
a date night." Like, childcare swap, whatever it takes, like that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it decreases the amount of money that you spend. If that's a worry, then
Mm-hmm.
you could even do a date night at home because your kids are at the
Oh
neighbors,
shoot.
like,
Yeah. Shoot.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
just
Those are
so
some of
many
my
things.
favorite. Some
Mhm,
of
me
my
too.
favorites, sitting at home
Mhm.
with pizza and a good old movie, and we like old
Yeah,
movies. We're not into
I
all the
love
big
that.
good stuff. I love old movies, but it's like if somebody can watch the fur babies for us, then that was the thing when we went on our walk
Mhm,
Saturday. I said, "Without the dogs," because we're with them all
mhm,
the time. I want just
mhm.
you. I don't want to
Yeah,
have to direct attention to worrying about a dog. And almost 3 miles we did, and it was just
mhm.
beautiful. I will remember that day forever. Um,
Yep,
I
yeah.
appreciate you so much for coming on today and sharing your story, your passion. I love that you are a trauma nurse and that you are touching lives. You are. And I know
Thank
that the
you.
people will remember you. And, getting past the secret that was deep within. And now that you're
Mhm.
free of that, and I'm sure there's still some things every once in a while we have to start, we're human
Oh,
part comes in and
absolutely.
we have to still go through and deal with it and that you fought for your marriage. There's too many
Mhm.
that give up in life and they could have something so beautiful and they don't try hard enough. Now, I'm not saying stay in something that's abusive. Of course, we don't
Right.
say that.
Yeah,
There's a way out of that too. And we want you to get the
exactly.
help for that.
Yep,
But if
I
you're in
agree.
something and you know it's for a purpose, you fight for it.
Yep, I
But
agree.
I will add everything on the podcast to how to find you on your podcast and to connect with you. And I look forward to doing this again someday.
I do too. This was so fun. I really enjoyed our conversation. And yeah, I hope it will just lead somebody else down a road of self discovery and
Hmm.
figuring out who they are and where they want to go and maybe pour some belief in themselves because we're all going to be faced with obstacles. We all have
Yes.
struggles and you're
Mm.
never alone in what you're going through.
Amen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining my podcast today. We all have a story to share. Each story has purpose and makes an impact to you, the listener, creating a journey with passion and purpose. The journey we're taking is the journey within you. Please share with others and subscribe below.